Um, to introduce our guest speakers today, we have Chuck Mason, Chuck Mason, President, CEO of Mason Construction LLC. And Chuck, you've got it.
Okay, sounds good. Very happy to be able to introduce Scott Dueser to you today. Scott is the president and CEO of First Financial Bank Shares and First Financial Bank. They're a system of 78 different locations, all in Texas, that really focuses on community banking. They have over 1,300 full-time employees. So for a locally focused one, they're really a pretty large group on it. Scott has been very successful in banking and the associations of that. He's been the chairman of the Texas Bankers Association. He was president of the American Institute of Banking, and in 2018, he served as the chairman of the International Financial Conference, which sounds important, but I have no idea what that actually is. He served on the Texas Tech Board of Regents from 2005 to 2009, and was chairman in the 2008-2009 period. He's also, he was the distinguished alum for the College of Business at Texas Tech, as well as later on the Distinguished Alumni Award from the Southwestern Graduate School of Banking. He's been involved in so many different things in Abilene on the local basis as well, from United Way to Boy Scouts. The Abilene Industrial Foundation, Texas Tech Alumni Association. He's our kind of person that very interested and passionate about everything he does. If you have a good memory, you may be like me and remember that he spoke to us at one time. Only, unlike me, I was thinking, okay, it was about 3 years ago he did this. You might remember that it was actually clear back in August of 2014 that he came. He spoke to us about financial elder abuse then. And I happened to know that they were opening their Beaumont branch that afternoon. We had gotten the invitation to go, and I kept waiting for him to give the ad, do his commercial in there. He never mentioned it at all. And I was so impressed by that. So Chad and I went to their grand opening that afternoon. I spoke to him, and one of the things I asked was, you talked to us about some of the problems that you saw that were potential problems for elders in their banking and things like that. And, how long did it take to put the measures into place that you talked to us about? And he said, well, that originally came up about 2 months ago. I had assumed, it had taken, a year and a half, 2 years to do all the things they've done. So I was very impressed that he took it as a personal challenge to deal with the problems of his clients. And it really impressed me so much that, when Chad and I got back to the office, both of us said, this is the kind of banker we want to deal with. And it certainly has been. So I'm very pleased as a client of his to introduce Scott Dueser this morning. Scott?
Thank you, Chuck. I really appreciate you doing that. Can y'all hear me and see me?
Looking good.
Okay, great. Okay, good. It's interesting that the last time I talked, I told you that I've had a long-standing relationship with Rotarians. And when I grew up, the Rotarians in Breckenridge, Texas, sponsored my Boy Scout troop. And that was the most outstanding troop of Boy Scouts in the United States at the time. Had more Eagle Scouts than anybody else. And so it was very successful, and it was a real neat way of growing up. But I'll never forget, I was the person that always had to report for the troop to the Rotary Club. And my mother was taking me one day, and she said, "Well, what are you writing?" And I said, "I'm writing my speech." And so that was on the way to the luncheon. So anyway, I've had a great relationship with the Rotarians, and it's my pleasure to be back with y'all today. Last time I did talk about financial elder abuse, and I want to talk about that. I want to kind of bring you up to date on what's going on there, because it's something that that's the most detrimental abuse that there is, because that's when you hit somebody in their 80s and 90s and you wipe them out of everything they own, there's no way they can remake it. When you do it to a younger person, they have time to remake it. So, I put the fraudsters down with snakes and the devil, to say the least, that do that, because that's really, really bad. We started this program, what we call our Fraud Buster program, in 2014. And it's all about training our people here at the bank how to catch elder or any type of financial exploitation. And I'm going to go into business financial exploitation, because I think that's something more related to you, and you can take it home with you. But it's all about training. It's all about education. And that's why we like doing service clubs, churches, retirement centers. Anytime we can tell about financial exploitation and keep people from getting involved in it, because it is very easy to do that. And we have partnerships with police forces and sheriff's departments, and we do give recognition off of it. Just to give you the numbers of what we've seen, when we started this program to stop exploitation, it was in 2014. That year we stopped $265,000. In 2015, it was $532,000 of fraud we stopped. In 2016, it was $2,074,000. In 2017, $2,226,000. In 2018, $2,667,000. And last year, it was $6,313,000. Every time we stop a fraud, we put that in the book, put the amount so that we know what we've done. And can you imagine it growing from $265,000 to $6 million in that period of time? And this is how bad fraud has gotten. I will say some of it, I think we've gotten better at stopping it, but it's really the magnitude of fraud out there. And it's much bigger today, as you can tell. And that's why I want to talk about the business part of it. Let me talk about elder financial exploitation. And your typical victim is that 70 to 89 years old, lonely, isolated, early dementia, element of greed, and they're worried about money. And their real subject, this is the group that gets the calls. And this is interesting. My lake house was my parents' home, and I still have their original phone out at the lake. And the fraudsters know that they would be in their 90s. And unfortunately, my parents passed away about 8 years ago. They'd be in their 90s, but every week that I get out there, there is a line of calls on the recorder of these fraudsters trying to get to my parents. And that tells you how prolific this is. And so those of you with older parents, you want to sit down and talk to them about this. In some situations, my rule is get their checkbook, have it under your control. You be on, get on their account and have it on mobile banking so that you can watch their account, because those are that's the group that's so subjected to these calls. The robo calls that you got, all of those are to get information from you. If you click on what they want is your credit card number. They don't want it because they're going to give you a deal. They want it because they're going to defraud you of money. And so the big frauds that we see out there in elder abuse are lottery winnings, where they tell you you won a lottery, but you got to pay the tax. And so you send them the money. Well, the lottery money never comes, but you may pay $5,000. They tell you you win $100,000 and you may pay $20,000 of tax. Well, you never see the other the 100,000. It never comes in. IRS, the calls that you get with IRS, and they say, you know, you owe us back taxes. You need to pay it. And the thing that they always say is you need to pay it in Bitcoin, which is where all the illegal transactions go. I'm not a Bitcoin fan. Or gift cards. So that tells you there it's fraudulent. Plus, the IRS will never call you. They will write you a letter. They won't call you. And you know whether you have back taxes or not. Fraudulent emails. We really have to watch that at the bank, and I'll tell you why. Because in your business, when you get a fraudulent email and they want you to click on something, what literally they do is take over your computer. And that is extremely serious. And they can, in our system, they could control the whole system if they get in the right way. And so that's really a fear. At home, they'll take over your computer at home, but what they want you to do is click on and then give them account number, social security number, credit card numbers, you name it, they want that information. And so you've got to watch your emails. Now, I gave Jackie a handout that she's going to email out to you, and it's got a lot more detail. And I would go through that because it shows you what to look at on an email to tell you whether it's fraudulent or not. And so that's really something you need to do. One of the funniest, but it's a serious scam, is a boyfriend or girlfriend scam. And they get with older people. We have had, believe it or not, a lady here at the bank, and she has no idea I know this because her daughter-in-law told me this, but she's been to Dallas to pick up a boyfriend 3 times, where she sent that different boyfriend each time $5,000 to fly over here to the States to see her, and he never showed. Well, men have the same problem. Some woman will call them on the phone, get a relationship, talk to them, say, oh, I want to come see you. I think we've got marriage in our plans, all that stuff. And, send me this money and I'll be over, and they even give them their flight number, when they're going to land and all of that. Not real, not real. Then you have the grandchild scam, where a grandchild calls you and says, Granddad, I'm in Mexico, and we had a wreck and they found drugs in the car. I'm in the Mexican jail, and you got to send me $5,000 to get out of jail, and don't call Dad. And they know exactly what they call you. Why? Because of Facebook. These fraudsters get on Facebook. They see pictures. They know your grandson is in Mexico because of Facebook, and they know what your grandson calls you. It's all set up. So, you've got to really watch what you put out on social media today. And you would not believe how many grandmothers and grandfathers will come into the bank and say, well, I've got to wire money to Mexico. And we go, why? Well, I can't tell you why. Well, that's the first red flag for us. We go, yeah, you need to tell us why. We're not going to wire it unless you tell us why. And then they tell us why. I had one that came in my office and said, I got to wire this money. I said, why? Oh, I can't tell you why. They said, okay, you got to tell me why. And she said, well, my grandson's in Mexico and he's in a Mexican jail. I said, oh, really? Have you talked to him on the phone? Oh, no. He told me they have his phone. I can't call him. I said, okay. I had his number in my phone. I said, wait just a minute. I called him and said, hey, Brad, here you're in Mexico. Yeah, I am, Mr. Dueser. I'm at the hotel. Said, you're not in jail? Oh, no. Said, well, your grandmother got a call that you're in jail. And so I said, here, talk to your grandmother. She was so glad that she didn't send that $5,000. but that's the type of stuff that goes on. And yeah, I would say every older person needs a trusted advisor. You know, they need somebody on their account that is overseeing what they do, how they do it, and if they go to the hospital to pay their bills. You know, picking a trusted son, a trusted daughter. You know, when my parents got to that point, they were all I have three sisters and me. All four of us were on their account. I had a sister in the same town that really wrote all the checks, but all of us could. We could see their account. We knew that what was going on, and it was good. It worked out. But you know, a trust company, a banker, an attorney, accountant, somebody like that. We have a lot of trust customers in our trust company that have no relatives, and so we are their relatives. And so they'll put their account into a trust, and we'll pay all their bills for them. So it's stuff like that that gives you the ability to not worry about things like that. So that's some of the top scams that are going on today. But I will tell you, it's not the elderly that just gets it. It's any age, and any poor, wealthy, it doesn't matter. And of course, credit card and debit card scams are huge today. And that comes from phishing and skimming, where you put your credit card in. And filling stations are the worst because they haven't updated. They don't have to be at chips yet. So putting on a device on that takes your PIN number, pictures your PIN number, and gets your card number. And within an hour, they've got your card remade and they're using it. And that's, you know, luckily, you know, we cover all our customers' cards that have fraud. You know, all you're liable for is $100, but it still meshes you up. And I will tell you, the best thing you can do is we've got on our mobile banking, we've got that every time your debit card is used, you get a text message, so you know it's being used. You can also, there's also a way of turning off your debit card. So if you lost your card, you can go ahead and turn it off. You don't have to worry about calling. Then if you find it, you can turn it back on. So those are ways of keeping from having debit card losses. Then we talk about business scams, because this is the big deal today. That's why the numbers jumped up to $6 million, because this is what's going on today. I talked about business email compromise scams, where they send you an email, you click on it, and they take over your computer. Well, in the business world, that's really bad, because then they can see everything that you're doing on your computer. They may be there for 2 weeks just studying what you're doing, looking at the emails, looking at what you do, how you visit with people. They've got all your contacts, and this happens to a lot of our customers. And so all of a sudden we'll get an email from a customer that says, Scott, would you please wire money for me? I'm closing on a house in Mexico. Here's the wiring instructions in Mexico. And you can't call me because I'm tied up in a meeting today, but it needs to happen. That's all red flags right there. One, we do not do any wire transfers on emails. We have to visit with the person personally. And we know their voice. And so we will not do that, because too many scammers do that. And if we did, that person's out that $100,000 that we just wired to Mexico, because it was a scam. Somebody has commandeered their computer. They know exactly, it looks just like it's an email from them, and you never know the difference. So we don't take any of that. It all has to be through our system, our controlled system of emails, which you have a device that lets you into that. And we know that you're in it, and we know that how it works. So that's one of the big scams out there today. You know, on the information that Jackie's going to send you, it shows you how to check for correct email address and make sure it's right. There is, for us, we have detection software that tells us if they think something's fraudulent, and it won't even let it in the system. Training and educating of your people. If you've got a lot of people that work for you that are on computers, they need to know to look for these softwares and don't click on them. What we do in our business is we have a spoof email that goes out every month to catch the people that don't know how to look for it. And so luckily, I've not clicked on one of those. I've caught them all. But a number of people we have 1,450 people in the company, and out of those, we'll have a certain number that do click on it. But they get reprimanded for doing it, and they get retaught, what to look for, that it is a spoofed email. And I can always tell them because I go through my emails. When you get 150 a day, you're ditching emails that don't mean anything as fast as you can ditch them. So it doesn't take me long to ditch that. I know who's real and who's coming through. So that's one of the big deals. Established vendor scam is another big one that is going around today. Okay, if you have a business and you've got your group of vendors and you pay them by wire transfer or ACH and or even by check, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But what happens is you'll get an invoice, and this happened with a company here that was a big customer of IBM and Microsoft. So they got their IBM invoice, and it had a change of where to wire the money. Well, they didn't think anything of it. Looked like their regular invoice. So they wired the money, same thing, same month, got a Microsoft invoice. Had a change on it. So they wired the money. They didn't know that they'd wired a total of $500,000 to fraudsters until they got past due notices from IBM and Microsoft. By that time, there wasn't anything we could do at the bank to save them. It was out, it was gone. So when somebody calls your accountant or your bookkeeper in your office or sends an invoice, and if something's different on it, they need to call the business. And don't call the number on the invoice. It's going to be the fraudster. Because if you call that number and say, hey, y'all changed the wiring instructions of this. Oh, yes, ma'am, we are now going out of this site, and this is the right wiring instructions. You're talking to the fraudster. You got to call IBM's number at IBM that you've used all these years, and they'll tell you, no, that's a wrong invoice. You've got a fraudulent invoice. So look at your invoices and make sure that somebody doesn't change the address on it, doesn't change the wiring instructions, because that's a big fraud today. And you know what? If you can make $500,000 in a couple days, that's not too bad for the fraudsters. Then the other one is a mortgage officer fraud or title company fraud, where they go in and get into a title company's books, or they're on your computer. You're buying a property, and I'll tell you the story with this one. We have a customer here that was buying a ranch for $5 million. The title company here he was working with, and the title company he was working with out of town that was closing the ranch, said, the title company here got an email from the other title company and said, hey, this is your wiring instructions, this is where to wire it, and all of this. Well, it all looked legitimate. What they'd done is they'd gotten into the customer's computer, found out he was doing this transaction, looked at all the emails about it, and sent the email to the title company and said, here's where to send it. Well, it was totally a fraud. That $5 million went out to the fraudsters and didn't go to the title company that it was supposed to. Well, luckily that they knew quickly that it was fraudulent and had gone the wrong place. So they contacted us. We went to work immediately. We got most of it back, but the title company still took a big loss. So these are things, this is why these numbers have jumped so big. And you know, I closed a lake house and it drove me crazy. I had both title companies on the phone at the same time, making sure that it was going the right places. Checks are still a big fraud deal. If you're paying company, if you're paying people and you're paying bills with checks today, that's a problem, because that's still one of the biggest areas fraudsters use are checks. And what they do on your payroll checks, they'll be outside of your construction site and they'll walk up to one of your guys and say, as he's walking away with his paycheck, and say, you know, sir, how big's your check? And he'll go, well, it's $350 for the week. And he'll go, well, I'll give you a $500 bill if you'll give me your check. Okay. The guy goes, that's not a bad deal for me. And this is why you got to train your people. Don't ever do that. Because what the fraudsters do is within a day, they go wash that amount out. It's your signature, it's your check, it's to him, but they wash it out, the amount, make it for $3,500. But they do that for a bunch of employees and change the employees' names. They have false IDs. They come to the bank. We know they're good customers of your construction company, are good employees, or we think. And so we're paying those out like we do because they all hit the bank about the same time, and we're paying it out. All of a sudden, we realize that we've gotten defrauded for $35,000 because we just cashed 10 checks. And so those are things that we watch today. We normally catch those things pretty quickly because it's not the normal amount. But today, payroll needs to be direct deposit, needs to be payroll cards. It needs to be something that doesn't get into anybody else's hands. It needs to go directly into our system, directly to them. And so we have methods of doing that for you with direct deposit payroll. We can set you up on, and there's some employees that don't have accounts. Well, having a payroll card is really neat for them because it automatically goes to that payroll card. And believe it or not, the companies that are using those love it because their employees like it. Because you think about it, if they don't have an account, don't have a credit card, don't have a debit card, they can't go rent a car. They can't rent a motel room. You can't go do that with cash today. So it allows them to go do business with that debit card and do a lot of things that they can't do, and they're not carrying around cash. So it's safer for them. So those are some of the things. The other thing, if you're writing checks to vendors and payroll, if you're not on Positive Pay, and what Positive Pay is a software that banks have that when you pay your bills, a software package comes to us and it shows us, it loads into our computer, shows us all the bills that you paid. So every time a check comes in, our computer matches that with the check that you did. Has to be the same payee, same amount, same signatures, same everything. And if they come to the teller line to cash that, the teller can that check pulls up at the teller line and shows her that it's the exact check. And so that keeps you from having any fraud on your account. And what happens is, if somebody did and they brought in that check that was for $350 for $3,500, and the check that you issued comes up on the computer, we know that's fraudulent. And this is where it's really cool that our tellers have gotten great at holding that person there until the police come. We call the police, and we probably, out of last year, we probably had over 50 arrests in our lobbies or in our drive-ins on fraudsters cashing checks because we had Positive Pay, or the teller realized that, one of them, I love this story, customer came in, or not a customer, a fraudster came in to cash a $10,000 check. And the teller knew the customer well enough that she thought, you know what, he never signs the checks, his wife does. And so she knew something was weird. And the other thing is he never writes a $10,000 check to anybody. And so she literally went back, called the customer. She said, you know what? I've got $10,000 check that somebody wants to cash in the drive-in. Did you write that? And he goes, no, no way. And she goes, okay. So she immediately calls the police, and in minutes, a police car drives up behind this car and in front of this car, so he can't go anywhere. And of course, he gets out of the car and starts running. Well, they chase him down. Well, you know, it happened to be the boyfriend of their grandchild who had gotten their checks. So it's stuff like that that, you know, our people are trained to catch. And I really commend our tellers and personal bankers and our wire people that catch all this stuff, because it's amazing. So let me look through my notes. That's kind of the main frauds that you see out there. And again, Jackie's going to send that information to you. If you're on our wire transfer system or any bank's wire transfer system, you can wire from your computer. We have methods and firewalls that keep it safe, but you also have a token that lets us know that it's you or your trusted employee that you've given that token to be able to wire funds for you. So that way, a token is when he or she's ready to wire, they hit a button and a number comes up and they put that number in. Well, we know that's them because that number's generated from us, from that token. And so we know it's a good wire, and that's how most of the wires get done. One of the things Chuck asked me to talk about just a little bit is the governor's strike force to open Texas. I was appointed to that committee. I am very honored to be appointed by the governor to that committee. I tell you, it has been one of the neatest things I've worked on civically out there. I have a great respect for our governor today. He has handled this situation extremely well. He's got about 40 people on the committee. And I always say it's who's who of Texas and then me, because everybody else are big dogs in Texas. But what's interesting is every time we have a meeting, we almost have 100% of the people on the meeting. Our job is to send the governor ways that we think the state needs to be reopened. Some of the things that I did, I got with our restaurant people here. I said, make me a plan of how you want to reopen. Same thing with all the different types of businesses. Got the chamber, they did a survey of all the chamber members of how they wanted Texas reopened and what they thought were the most important things. So those are the things that I've been able to send to the governor to represent our area of the state. And even I've had customers of our bank across the state say, hey, I don't have anybody to send stuff to. You know, I want to open my athletic club. I want to do this. I said, send me your plan. And so that all went to the governor. What's interesting is the governor has 4 doctors on this committee that are nationally known for disease control. And they look at every plan. And so they've come out with how to do business and keep the virus from spreading in your business and to your customers. And that's the 63-page book that he came out with. I'm trying to think what date that came out with, but you can get that book. You can download that book, and it tells you how to open your business, what to do. You know, May 1st, we opened retail stores, restaurants, museums, outdoor sports, churches, solo offices, malls, theaters, libraries, doctors, and dentist offices. And so at 25% capacity. And so you can go to 50% capacity if you have 5 or less cases in your county. So unfortunately, Abilene's a hot spot, or has been. In fact, we're the 4th largest growing in the United States at one time. We've backed off of that. And of course, last Friday, he opened barbershops, beauty shops, nail salons, and gyms. And so all of this is coming out with this information from this committee. We're working on the next set of stuff to come out. And I will say, I think it's great. I think we are, of course, deemed essential business, so we have never closed here at the bank. We've learned how to live with it. In fact, that was one of the things the governor asked me. He said, okay, you've been in the midst of this and you've been able to do it and keep your people safe. I want your plan of how you've done it. And we had, in fact, one of your doctors in Beaumont helped me do our plan, Dr. Callis. And he sat down with me early on and said, these are things you need to do, bing, bing, bing. And I really give it to Dr. Callis because he spent a lot of time with me and said, here's what you do, here's what you focus on. And here that plan has gone to the state and been used at the state level. So, but the things that I will say the governor's really focused on, and I really appreciate it, he's got 4 things. One, to protect the most vulnerable, the 65 and above, especially people living in assisted living and retirement centers. He's really put a lot of focus on that. And because that's where the deaths are. 75% of the deaths come from that group right there. So right now, if you've noticed, he's finally got enough tests out there. They're going to test everybody that is in a retirement center and works for a retirement center so they know whether they've got it or not. And that will help. Number 2, he's used a great medical team and good data to create the strategies that we're reopening the test with, or the state with, and a lot of testing and tracing. When somebody has it, they trace where you got it from. Emphasize social distancing and wearing a mask, and putting Texas back to work the safest way. And he's not looked at what the media gives you, and I like this. He looks at active cases. He's looking at active cases and people hospitalized. That's what he's looking at. If he looks at total, there are a lot of people that have been cured, so it's not that important. Active cases are what's important. And so that's what he's looking at. And the hospitalizations are coming down. Now, active cases are going up, but the reason they're going up is the amount of testing that's being done today. There were probably a lot of people that had COVID-19 that didn't know it. And because they weren't tested, or they had some symptoms but didn't think it was that bad, and so they weren't tested. So that's why we're seeing that number come up, but the fact that hospitalizations are going down says that it's getting better throughout the state. So anyway, my pleasure just to present that data to you. You may use it however you want to. Chuck, I hope that's kind of what you wanted. I'm open for questions.
Scott, thank you for talking to us today, and hopefully some people will ask what they really want to know rather than what you said.
Okay, that's exactly. You know, when we do investor presentations, I go, you don't want to hear me talk. I want to hear what you want to know, and so ask it.
So far, I'm just seeing good comments. People enjoy your presentation. Thanks for being with us. But y'all ask your questions now.
Yeah, and you can unmute if you want to and ask, or you can type it in, whatever is more convenient.
Scott, I'll ask you something, Chuck, again. What were some of the measures that y'all did within your banks to allow you to operate during this time when there was such a mystery about what was even going on? What do you think were the keys to y'all's success on that?
Chuck, it was what we did was, and again, Dr. Callis really helped us do this because, you know, we were all scared to death, and our people were scared. They were scared to come to work, and so we had to make it a safe place, and they had to feel safe. So the things that we did was we cleaned everything and sanitized. There's a company that comes in and it fogs, and that fog will kill any virus and any germ for about 90 days. So we did that, but we split every large department into 2. We move them to other locations or move them home. So every department is only a half of what's there. So if somebody in that department gets it, we're not wiped out. We're not totally wiped out. We got somebody else that can do what we need to do and get us by. And we did social distancing with everybody. We allowed people to wear masks. It's not required, but if they want to wear masks, they're more than welcome to wear a mask. We didn't let anybody travel. Anybody that had traveled or had been on a cruise or to Europe or anywhere on an airplane, they had to go in quarantine for 14 days. And so they went home for 14 days and then came back to work. Anybody that is sick could not come to work. Or if he even felt bad, don't come to work. And all of that put together really kept our people safe. Now we've had 4 cases in the bank, but those 4 cases were in different cities. They didn't come from customers. They didn't come from fellow workers. They came from family members. And so they went home. They were quarantined and they all came through it very well. And they're all back to work today. So far, we have not had any more cases, but part of that is that social distancing is very important. When we have meetings, we spread out. I did new employee orientation today. They have a person at each table. It's one at each end of a table. They're 6 feet apart, and food service. The other thing we did, Chuck, is we fed everybody lunch every day because I didn't want people going out. So if they would come to work, they got lunch, and we used a different restaurant every day that was our customer. So it gave these restaurants business during the pandemic and when they were shut down because they were delivering food to the bank. And it really was great advertising for them because I ate at restaurants I've never been to and found some really nice restaurants that I like now, love their food, but our people felt safe because they didn't have to go out in public. And they didn't have to fix their own food and bring their own food. It was just served for them. Every day, somebody set lunch on my desk for me. And that was great. I just sat here and returned emails and worked. But that's what we did.
I have a question here, Scott. It's asking, do you know when the next round of openings is going to be?
Probably the next week. I think we'll have some meetings next week. This stuff happens pretty quickly. When the governor, we moved a lot quicker on the barbershops, and I think he had a lot of pressure to do that. Especially the beauty shops. There were a lot of women that weren't happy, and women voters control the polls today. So I think the governor understands that. But, once the doctors figured out how they could do it, and frankly, I feel very safe about going to a barbershop today. Don't mind being masked. Don't mind being the barber masked. Same thing with the dentist. The dentists have all the masks and all the stuff. And of course, you can't be masked when they're working on your teeth, but getting those people back to work is really important. And I think that's going to help us cut the unemployment rather quickly and get the economy going again.
Okay, back on your first part of your presentation, please comment again about using no checks, even for bill pay. I'm sorry, I'm being a little old-fashioned, but do I even need checks at all?
We don't use any checks at the bank unless occasionally somebody has to have a check. We pay everything through bill pay. We have a bill pay system. It all goes through that, and it's so much safer. And our people are well versed on looking at invoices, making sure they're right invoices, and going through the process of making sure things are good. So checks are a thing of the past. They are, the fraudsters love them because they can wash them and use them very easily.
Okay, let me give you another one here. What subsidies and assistance are being requested of the federal government by the state of Texas?
I'm not sure what the governor's doing on that. We've not talked about that. I'm sure there are things coming because out of the CARES Act, there were some things for specific deals there. And so I'm sure, now I will say Congress is working on what they call the HEROES Act. I personally am not for that at this point. I would like to see how what we've done reacts and how opening the state and opening the country up reacts. That's our tax dollars going out that we got to pay one of these days. Frankly, I think the government acted very quickly, very judiciously, and did a great job. I think they need to wait and see how what they did does. And, that gets us, the PPP money gets us 8 weeks out. So it pays for 8 weeks of payroll. Let's see how that does and then look at things. Because I think by that time we'll be reopening. I think with all the testing that's going on, we'll see and we'll see the disease grow less because people are being tested, and I think people are taking things seriously. The one thing about going home and being at home, I think it made people know how serious this is. And as we reopen, they know they got to go to work and be serious about it at work.
One of our members says, I was surprised how easy it was to wire money from my brokerage to my granddaughter. What security systems do they actually use beyond my username and password?
I don't know. I don't know what they're checking there. If they didn't call you back, that's a problem. We do callbacks on all of those that come in like that, unless they have the device that we know it's them. We do a callback and just make sure it's them. And I will tell you, I have not called a customer back that hadn't appreciated it, because they know that we're going the extra mile to make sure that they're safe. And, a lot of times the wire transfer department will call me and say, can I transfer this call to you? I do not know this customer's voice. And they know most customers' voices up there. And it'll be a customer that wants to do a wire. They're doing it by the phone. And yes, I'll know their voice and say, yes, this wire's fine. Send it on.
That's good. Have you heard anything about daycares reopening?
Daycares, a lot of daycares are open today. I know some of them have closed. I know United Way, in conjunction with YMCA and the school district, did daycares with some of the schools here so that we could reopen, because we had a real problem. We've got a lot of single parents that have to have daycare and to come to work, and we needed them at work. And so they went to some of the schools that were closed, picked several schools across the city and opened daycares in those schools to take care of us and all the doctors and hospital employees that all were considered essential. So I think we'll see daycares continue to open. And I think we'll start seeing sports. I have sent in several things. A&M had me send, because we have a new bank in Bryan College Station, A&M had me send a deal in on their sports, what they propose for a summer baseball league that they want to do. And so I think we'll see some things come out on sports. I don't care if I sit in the stands. I just want to see it on TV. I'm tired of watching game shows.
Okay, and there was one up here that I want to get back to real quick. It's probably our last one, but she asked, people are also scared when we have flu outbreaks that get out of hand. Do you know if there's any way that some of what we're learning now is going to protect people with the flu season too?
No question. If we would have been using this for flu season, and luckily we have, ways of keeping to get the flu, but all those vaccines don't work sometimes, and you still get the flu. So in people that don't have the vaccine, here at the bank, we line everybody up, and it's not required, but we give it away. So, that's what keeps us fair. But washing your hands, social distancing when and if somebody's sick, they need to stay home. They do not need to come to work. And that's going to be a rule that will go on. And I think in every workplace, don't feel good, don't come to work. We don't want what you have, and we don't want to spread it. Remember, more people die of the flu than have died from this virus. And if we if we put that on media today, people would be amazed at how lethal the flu is in comparison to the coronavirus.
I totally agree. Joe, maybe we need to do our wrap now. And if anybody has anything real urgent you want to stay after, I think Scott will answer a few questions after the meeting too.
Sure will. I just want to say thank you so much for having me. It's been my pleasure. We love Southeast Texas. I will tell you, we talked about opening the Beaumont branch. It has been our fastest growing branch of any branch we've ever opened. So that says a lot about Beaumont and the economy in Beaumont. So we really appreciate Southeast Texas a lot.
And thank you very much. I appreciate, and thank you, Scott, for the visiting us again and sharing this interesting and very, very helpful information with us. To express our appreciation, we are going to make a donation in your name to the Rotary Foundation's End Polio Now campaign. Thank you very much for doing that, for being here. And if you able to stay for some more, and we may have some others that might want to have some questions, then just hang in there.
Okay, I will be happy to.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for that donation. If you remember, if I remember, Rotarians did away with polio.
Well, yeah, we're pretty close to having it. It's really down to a very, very small amount. But there's still a little bit there, and we're still going after it.
That's great. That's great.
I appreciate that. So I want to thank all of you for attending the meeting today. When I say all of you, I mean everybody here. Remember our volunteer to work at the Southeast Texas Food Bank on either Friday or Saturday, either one. They really need our help, and if you feel comfortable about social distancing at this nonprofit, then we will be glad to have you. Also, call our email Pat Anderson and Gary Moncla about helping with the flag project on the memorial. I got that one day. Thank you very much. And now if you will turn on your microphone for us very much, everyone, and join with me that we will recite the four-way test of the things that we think, say, or do. So let's first start with first, is it the truth? Second, is it the fair
to all concerned?
Third, will it
Build
bring
goodwill,
and good
friendships.
And fourth, will it be beneficial
To all concerned.
Thank you. Have a good week and go out and connect the world. I'm going to ring the bell. We're going to be done. Thank you so much.
Saturday.
Later.
Good morning.
You didn't want to say for any questions, did you?
Jackie, I'm still on.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Let's see if there's any questions. Oh, I see Lynn and Sylvester together. Gotcha.
Yeah. Let's see.
See if there's anything else here I can pass on.
Yeah.
Somebody asked here, Scott, if y'all have programs that you take to the nursing home facilities. I'm assuming here they're talking about the fraud issue.
Yes, we do. We have in all across our footprint, we have a speakers bureau that you can call the bank, and we will go anywhere and give a similar speech to what I gave. I gave this more for y'all, but if we went to a retirement center, we would give them specifically things for them to do and watch for, and train them how to keep from getting defrauded.
Would that be any of your branches we call, or would call?
Yes. Yeah. You know, you can just call Stephen Lee there and say, Stephen, I need a speaker. And he's got plenty of people that are very glad to do it. We've got speeches at the gazoo that we can give. You know, I've written a number of them, and but we've got it all down, and they just go give them. And everybody kind of has their own way of giving it.
Yeah, that's good to pass on to this person. I think she's signed off, but I believe I'll pass it on to her.
Yeah, we do a lot of churches too. We do anywhere that we can reach people.
Okay, and there was Brad had a question about the impact of PPP on small businesses. Do you have any comments?
It's been huge. It has helped so many small businesses, and it's been, I will tell you, it's been our pleasure to administer that program. We're not going to make a whole lot of money with it, but it's, I will tell you, the appreciation of people by getting that money and being able to keep their people on the payroll for 8 weeks is huge. And I just commend Congress for doing it, and the banks across the nation for distributing that money and getting it out there and taking the apps. We had people working 24 hours because the system to put those loans in, the E-Tran system with SBA was very clunky, and we found that it was better to do it in late night and early mornings. And so we had people staying 24 hours to do that, to get those loans in and get them processed and funded.
I know your local bankers here were. They
Oh, they
contacted
were.
me. Of course, yeah. They were.
They did a great job. They just did outstanding.
Okay. I'm seeing a lot of thank yous, but other than that, I think we've got the questions.
Yeah,
Well,
I was going to say you did a great job. Really
oh,
did.
thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that. And again, it's always my pleasure. I'm just sorry I'm not there with you to shake hands and you know, because the last time I was there, it was so interesting because I thought I'm not going to know anybody, and I knew a lot of people. And so it was like kind of like old home week. My brother-in-law grew up in Orange, and so he was a Duhan. So you know, I've got ties to that area, to say the least.
Yeah, you did great. Okay.
I know some Duhans from Orange.
Well, they're related to me.
How about that?
All
Well, we
right.
sure appreciate you very much.
Appreciate y'all, and y'all have a good day. And next time, I hope I'm with you. I'll come have lunch with you one of these days.
That sounds good.
Great, Scott. Thank you very much.
All right. See you.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you, Jack. Appreciate it.
You got it.
Let's see.